Detroit has improved tremendously within the past 2 years to the point that you can't just assume they're going to lose to really good teams anymore. And Goff will likely be at his best because he is a much different quarterback when he's kept clean than when he's pressured, which he shouldn't be getting pressured much without Chris Jones being basically the only pressure getter for the Chiefs. So there's a lot to like for Detroit, but let's not kid ourselves here. Kansas City has the best quarterback in the league, and they also probably have the better offensive line. And in addition to that, they also probably have better defensive back play as well. The defensive back part is definitely arguable because the Lions have put a lot of investment into the secondary, and there's a ton of talent there as well. But this is week one, and there's not a whole lot of cohesion there, whereas the Chiefs are running basically back the same unit from last year. The Steelers are at home, and their great defensive line will be able to make life difficult on Brock Purdy as they feast on the weak offensive line of the Niners. With that said, though, the Niners are still going to win because their defensive line is also great, which is more of an issue for Pickett as he takes a while to process defenses, whereas Purdy gets rid of the ball far more quickly. The Steelers have also a second-year defensive coordinator against Kyle Shanahan, which is definitely a mismatch. In addition to that, too, Matt Canada is going against a living, breathing defensive coordinator, which means that that's a mismatch in favor of the 49ers again. Coaching is definitely in favor of the 49ers, so bet a unit on them -2.5. Atlanta has far superior weapons and line play than Carolina does, so even though the Panthers likely have the better quarterback and coach, I think Atlanta will probably win. The Falcons' elite offensive line should keep Ritter protected, and Bijan should have success rushing too, so a lot of the pressure is going to be alleviated from Ritter, and I think that's going to make all the difference. Defensively, Atlanta isn't great, but you don't need to be in order to slow down Carolina's island of misfit toys, so I think Atlanta should probably win this game. If you go through position by position, the Browns have the Bengals beat in most places. However, the Bengals beat the Browns where it counts the most, that being quarterback and wide receiver. If Cleveland's sexual predator returns to his prime form, then there's no reason Cleveland can't beat Cincy, but Watson was a disaster last year, and there's no guarantee he returns to his once high level of play. Moreover, I think that Burrow is going to play and be healthy, so I don't see why you can't bet a unit on the Bengals at -2.5, which kind of seems like a steal to me. The Jaguars have an elite quarterback and elite weapons, and they're going against the Colts, who have a rookie quarterback and one receiving option on the entire team. I don't know if this game will be close, even with the Colts having a chance to have a lot of success rushing the ball, but I'm not comfortable enough to bet on it because, again, the Colts might have some success rushing, which could limit the possessions and make this game a little bit closer than it actually should be. I can keep this one short and sweet. The Vikings should dominate the Bucs. They have the better coach, the better quarterback, and the better roster as a whole, so I don't think this should be much of an issue for Minnesota. As an upset, I like the Titans over New Orleans because Derek Carr, to put it simply, was awful last year. And he was awful with a top 3 wide receiver and an elite offensive line, both of which he no longer has. Whereas Tannehill had worse weapons last year than he does now, and he was still solid. Neither team has an offensive line, but the Titans have a much better defensive line, so they should be able to get after Carr more than the Saints get after Tannehill. With all that said, I'd be a little crazy with this one, and I'd bet 2 units on the Titans +3. This game is so bad and so sad, you would think it would be playing on a Thursday night, but it's actually playing on a Sunday afternoon, believe it or not. Arizona might be the worst team in the league. Washington isn't great, but they're at least competitive, so they should definitely win because Arizona, they're starting Josh Dobbs at quarterback. I don't care what you think of Sam Howell. Sam Howell at least deserves to be a starter. Josh Dobbs, not so much. Houston isn't nearly as bad as some people think they are, but they're still going to get steamrolled by the Ravens because the Ravens are a legit Super Bowl contender, so they should have no problem handling a weak opponent at home. And unfortunately, that's what Houston's going to be, at least for the early part of the season. I could see a world in which they get better with time, but Baltimore is not going to have a problem with them week one. In what is the hardest game of the week to project, Green Bay is taking on Chicago, and I'm going to give you a kind of lame answer. Green Bay has the better line play, and they have the better secondary, but Chicago has better receivers and better linebackers. So it's really close, but I'll end up taking Chicago because they're home, and I've seen NFL level play from Fields, and I haven't seen nearly as much of that from Jordan Love. But in the end, this one really is a toss-up. In a legendary battle of two of the most disappointing teams from last year, I'll take Denver over Las Vegas because the quarterback situations are similar. However, I like Denver's overall talent more so than I do Vegas's. Adams is the best deep downfield, and Jimmy G, he can really struggle to hit those deep shots. So even though Denver may struggle to cover him at times, I think they might go unpunished because, again, Garoppolo is just really not that guy. He can't hit those 40-yard bombs, and I think that really could be the deciding factor in this game. And really with Wilson, I think he's going to have a lot of success because I don't think he's back, but I think he's going to look good against a weak Raiders defense. Philly is going to roll against the Patriots because, to put it simply, Jalen Hurts is elite, and Mac Jones is much better than he appeared last year with a defensive coordinator as his offensive coordinator. But even at his best, he still isn't close to what Hurts has shown himself to be. As far as the teams go, Philly might be better at every single positional group as well, so I think Philly is a near lock. Chargers and Dolphins is another difficult game to pick, but I like the Chargers because though last year Tua had a better year than Herbert did, Herbert dealt with about as much adversity as any quarterback, and he was still very solid. He's now back at full health, and so are his weapons, and last year, Brandon Staley showed an ability to slow down this potent Dolphins offense. I think they'll be able to replicate that better than Miami will be able to slow down Herbert because Herbert has been elite at basically every step of the way throughout his career, so why would it stop now? Especially to an injured defensive back room such as what Miami has. I just don't think they're going to be able to do it. Divisional games can be surprising, but I doubt Seattle has much of an issue with the Rams without Cooper Kupp because Geno Smith was much better than Stafford was last year. That's before factoring in that Seattle has had much better weapons and defensive backs on their team than the Rams do. And they've only added to that in last year's draft, and the Rams really did nothing to address that. So I think Seattle is going to win without much of an issue. The gap between Dak and Jones is closer than Cowboys fans would like to admit, but the rest of the team favors the Cowboys from the line play to the skill positions on both sides of the ball. So though the Giants pose some sort of threat to Dallas, I think the Cowboys will be able to win in New York. Buffalo is being slept on against the Jets because though New York has a ton of promise and they're the home team, Josh Allen was at a minimum a top 4 quarterback last year, and Rodgers was about average. Beyond that, the teams are very similar, so why not trust a team with a far superior quarterback and a team that has much better cohesion than a team that's just been put together over the offseason? I like Buffalo enough to put a unit on them -2.5.